to see you again.
Hello, good to see you.
You accomplished people. Assalamu alaikum. How are you all? Today we have three high achievers, which seems very appropriate for the kingdom of achievement. We're going to talk to them about how they've established and maintained leadership positions in their areas of focus, but we've simplified the theme to how to think big. To my left, I have Amy Landino, who is a personal brand and business coach, an award-winning YouTube content creator. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And a best-selling author, Good Morning, Good Life. We have Brian Solis at the end, world-renowned futurist and digital anthropologist, award-winning author of 9 books, including his new title, Mindshift, Transform Leadership, Drive Innovation, and Reshape the Future, as well as 60 industry research papers covering the future of business and corporate innovation. Brian is currently the head of global innovation at ServiceNow. And we have Matt Higgins, a repeat founder and owner of multi-billion portfolio of consumer brands, including some in the region, such as Magnolia Bakery and Vayner Media with Gary Vee. He's the only shark who's appeared on the US and Dubai version of the hit show Shark Tank, and is the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Burn the Boats, which will be published in Arabic by Jamir in 3 weeks. So please welcome our amazing people to the stage.
Thank you.
Matt, I'll start with you, having appeared on Shark Tank in the US and in Dubai. Have you noticed any differences in how entrepreneurs are thinking in a big way?
That was what was most interesting for me coming from the US version to the Dubai version. Number one, the sharks in Dubai were a lot nicer than the sharks in the US. They let you get your word in. But actually, my biggest takeaway is that everyone is the same. The entrepreneurial energy of Shark Tank in Dubai was the same energy you see in the US. It's people trying to crack into a big market, trying to figure out how to enlist a shark to go to the next level. They also didn't know their numbers the same way the entrepreneurs in the US don't know their numbers. It was remarkably the same, which got me excited to make me feel like I could do business here just the same way I do business in the US.
Okay. When it comes to the individuals on the Shark Tank, what are the 3 traits you look for in a team or in a founder?
Yeah, number one, I look for someone who is not wanting an investor to go on a rescue mission. Sometimes people will come on Shark Tank and think it's philanthropy tank. It's not. We're here to make money. So one, I want to make sure that even if I didn't write a check, you'd be successful. 2, I want to know that you can handle feedback, but you don't cave when somebody questions your vision. You stick by your vision, but at the same time, you're open to feedback. And 3, know your numbers. I'm amazed how many people come on Shark Tank and they don't have a full command of their business. I see this with restaurateurs. They love food and they want a business of a restaurant to be about the food. It's not just about the food. It's about your unit economics. And so those are the 3, but the last one, know your numbers.
Okay, perfect. Amy, you've been on an independent, entrepreneurial / creator lifestyle trip for a time now. When did you believe that you were ready to write your book, Good Morning, Good Life?
Oh, my audience told me. That's how I knew. I was never inclined to write a book until people started asking for them. My first one was called Vlog Like a Boss. I thought that was hilarious that people were asking me how to make videos. And also, can you write a book about how to make videos? And I was like, there's free videos for you to watch. So that came very organically. Good Morning, Good Life, same thing. As we started talking about why are we not taking these steps in business, or why are we not making the time for something? There was a big productivity issue and a focus issue, and I began speaking about, well, how do you start the day on your terms? And that really confused people. So the conversation around how do you start the day on your terms, take command of the day, then prioritize accordingly as you continue, that's how Good Morning, Good Life came to be. And I wrote that little manual, and it has been wonderful. I actually have copies in Arabic with me. If anybody wants one, just come find me.
Perfect. What's been the scariest part of your journey so far?
The scariest?
Yeah.
Needing to know my numbers.
You're not on Shark Tank. It's okay.
No, but you need to, right? I think it's a big misconception you can get into something because you're very passionate about it and that's good enough. But if you are growing a business, especially if you don't want to be a forever freelancer, is what I say to my clients, you have to know your numbers, you have to know what you're building so that at some point you are not every role that is needed at any given time. And when you're very passionate about something, it's easy to lose sight of that. You think you're going to be in love with your business forever. Okay. And so being creative and also knowing my numbers and being okay with that so that I stay in the CEO role has been scary, but probably the most important shift.
Okay, perfect. Brian, business transformation, that means you're largely working with companies that have existed for a period of time. How do you help them think big? Because we've all probably read the book, The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. Big businesses struggle to change. How do you help them change and to think big?
Well, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. And also, I timed it so my soundtrack music
would be
here for the answer. It's a very dramatic answer. First of all, I'm proud to be on the stage. Amy, you've been an OG since social media has been a thing. And Matt, I mean, what haven't you done? And that you've been a big inspiration in my life.
Thank you.
I'm proud to be up here. One of the things that, as a futurist, that I spend my time doing is understanding how technology, how emerging trends are going to potentially impact markets. And then as a digital anthropologist, I try to understand how they're going to impact behaviors so that I can advise boards of directors or CEOs on how to change their business towards the future while there's time. And believe it or not, that is not a popular narrative to tell. So where I used media, where I used social media, where I used writing, was to help translate those trends in ways to create a sense of urgency or a sense of inspiration to want to innovate, to try to inspire those leaders to build change as part of the organizational regimen. And I found that it was a lot harder to do, but the more time you spend in trying to make it simple, to speak the language of an executive, more work for me, but easier to bring about change. And it's been about 30 years. Success, it only took 30 years to make.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's with artificial intelligence now, it's starting all over again. And it's trying to open people's minds to help them see what they couldn't see, to do what they weren't going to do.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of psychology research into entrepreneurship versus running a big business. Entrepreneurs tend to be very high in openness, interested in variety, novelty, experimentation. At some point, maybe it's a slow tipping point where we'll call them more psychologically conservative business leaders need to come in and steer the ship to conserve the status quo to make sure things don't change too much. If somebody here is working into a senior leadership group, because Saudi Arabia, from what I understand, 80% of the population is under the age of 30. If they're working into a more senior group who's trying to keep things a little bit the way they are, what are some tricks of the trade to help get senior leadership see and want the vision for change?
Well, you used the right word, psychology. I came up in Silicon Valley where just the idea or the spirit of innovation or the spirit of entrepreneurialism was enough to get people excited. But it's really not the case outside of Silicon Valley. People don't know what they don't know, and so philosophically you have to help them see, almost like the way that Disney makes a movie. You have to see them, they have to see themselves in the movie. They have to relate to the characters, to the story, for them to feel compelled to want to be part of it. And so part of my job is to translate trends and opportunities and threats into a narrative that will help them understand psychologically and emotionally why they want to be part of this story and the role that they can play in helping the story become a success. It's not easy, but it is the only way to get people to see what they can. And that is because if you think about what a senior leader has to do is they have their audience, they have their networks of people, they have their measures of success, and it's not really the same as the future or the unknown. Yep. And so my job is to help connect the dots to them, to help them feel like they understand and that they want to come along for the journey.
Okay, so we'll spend a few minutes talking more about the mindset. Matt, you were telling us a story that's real time, a live story about a friend in Florida who's trying to solve a particular problem, and you're helping us understand how this person thought. I'd love you just to tell the story.
Yeah, my partner is Stephen Ross, who's one of the largest developers in the world, largest developer in the United States. And I have worked with him for the last 12 years. He's 85 years old. I'm clearly not. And I've watched, I remember early on in my career, maybe I was a little more rigid, he would always come up with some audacious vision. I'm going to transform New York, and we're going to transform this rail yard into the largest development in the United States, or all these different things. And you know, when you're becoming an entrepreneur and getting more comfortable in your own skin, you have to shed your rigidity. And there were times when I would maybe kind of roll my eyes like, this is crazy. And then it would happen. And so I've watched this play out. So my partner, Steve, after the pandemic, decides that West Palm Beach in the US could be the next Silicon Valley. And I am literally watching him go step by step, doing all the things that he needs to do to transform a community into the next Silicon Valley, attracting a major university, great schools, step by step. A lot similar mindset to what happens in the GCC, what's happening in UAE, in Abu Dhabi, what's happening in Saudi Arabia. This idea of having a huge vision and taking custody of that vision and doing piece by piece. And what's been so invaluable for me, and being a little bit reflective, is remembering the younger version of myself when he might say something like that and be skeptical. Now when he says we're turning into the next Silicon Valley, I say game on. So I would say anyone out here who's first getting comfortable with being an entrepreneur, you want to audit your impulses where you tend to be a little skeptical and cynical, and ask yourself, am I this way because I'm afraid? I'm afraid to dream, am I afraid to lean in? And the same exact transformation that's happened in Saudi Arabia in the last 10 years is born of that mindset. A huge vision that maybe seemed too audacious to believe, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the pieces happen in front of your eyes. And that's what's happening in Palm Beach.
Awesome, awesome. So, Amy, I know you work with businesses as well, but let's focus on some of the more either individual or small group coaching, consulting that you do. What do you feel is the main obstacle that the people that you've worked with have when it comes to thinking differently and bigger?
That's a good question, because the biggest issue is everybody's got this manual that nobody wrote, but very clearly has rules in it, and they're all trying to follow an arbitrary set of rules. Anytime I'm working with a client and they need to get a result, they for some reason can't get there because of all these rules that are in place they think that they have to follow. So I think thinking bigger is questioning those things, and especially beating that fear, which is such a big piece of it. You have to be willing to say, okay, but if we're going to do that, why would that be the best way? Just because everyone's done it that way, does it have to be done that way? There's so many things, even in just the last year, I feel like I've changed in my own mindset that I never would have thought to do before, because, well, we have to get this landing page and do it this way and da-da-da-da-da. And now I just see that the easier you make it for the end user, the potential client, the potential customer of your product, the easier you make it, the better. So if you can find a nicer way to reduce friction, then go with it. And I see their faces when I tell them, like, oh, well, what if you just do it exactly the way that's the easiest for the customer? It's like, wait, what? Don't I have to check these boxes? We have to stop reading a manual that doesn't exist, because if there's a better way, we can be the ones to spearhead a way toward it.
Do you ever have people saying, oh, this feels a little bit like therapy, when they might have expected it to feel more like an MBA interaction?
So much.
Okay.
It's actually amazing how much I feel like I could write a parenting book, because I feel like we're all just childhood versions of ourselves looking for the adult in the room that's going to tell us the right thing to do. It happens with business coaching. I turn into a life therapist. You know, on a call last week, one of my clients brought up their relationship with their mother and how they want to be different for their child. And it's reflected in how they present themselves, not just in life, but as a business owner. So yeah, it's a lot of therapy for people.
What do you find is the question that gets to the heart of someone's blocks, mental blocks?
What problem are we solving for?
Okay.
We make up the idea of what that is by having that manual, and we have to follow these steps. But if you just get to the root of what problem are you solving for, the steps to find the solution are usually a lot simpler than you've told yourself.
And I would say for me, it's why I wrote my book. It's why I chose to write a business book that's actually a psychology book, Burn the Boats, is because to your point, what's the question that unlocks somebody? It's what's beckoning you to retreat from your own vision? What is your metaphorical boat that is saying retreat? And when I identify what it is that makes somebody feel like they have to conjure a plan B to what they really want to do, if I could identify that thing that is holding them back, then that's when breakthroughs happen. For me, it was the shame of poverty. I grew up with nothing. I grew up on government assistance, taking care of my mother in a wheelchair, and I had a life of concealment, where I lived in a dirty house, and I didn't want anyone to know what I was going through until I was 26 years old. I didn't realize into adulthood that shame of discovery of imposter syndrome was actually holding me back. And once I started telling the story I just shared with you, it was like a weight was relieved off my shoulders. It wasn't until I started telling the truth about my origin story that I was able to commit to my plan A. And so the idea of Burn the Boats is really about what are the metaphorical boats in your life that makes you think that you can't pull off what you want to pull off. Some people it's anxiety. Some people it's because dad never said I love you or I'm proud of you. And for me it was I didn't know which fork or spoon to use with the meal at night because I grew up so poor. So the unlock in business, and that's why I tell these stories, is like, what is the metaphorical boat that's telling you to back away from your own ambition?
Okay. Love that. Brian, hugely successful. Let's start there. You've written 9 books, super connected into Silicon Valley. Yet we were talking last night, and it seems like you're at a point in your career where you're trying to think about how big to think about your next step. What can you share with us? How
are you having
thinking?
an existential crisis? Would you unburden yourself in this room?
This will teach you not to have dinner with me before an interview.
It's a safe space. Here.
Someone did say therapy.
How are you thinking about your next phase?
First, I want to say I didn't know that backstory, Matt, and it's pretty powerful to see where you are today with that story. And Amy,
thank you.
Just to watch where you are today is just impressive. And also, finding the adult in the room spoke near and dear to my heart. I think forever I've been trying to earn my mother's pride, but I always say that if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're on the wrong side of innovation. And that for every entrepreneur you've invested in, or every Silicon Valley startup that's changed the world, or every government project that's unlocked new vision, has all happened because someone believed in a new future and believed enough that they could inspire others around them to buy into that vision. I've realized in my life that skepticism, cynicism, fear, arrogance, ignorance, these things are pervasive, and they're all the enemies of innovation. Each one of those personas, each one of those biases can find every reason why you can't do something. And you'll find comfort in that, actually, that it's safer and better to follow the rules, to follow tradition. And while you can respect the rules and respect tradition, innovation requires you to ask questions. Innovation requires you to explore the unknown and to have ideas, to be curious, to bring your childlike wonder and imagination back into the forefront, to be able to imagine a future that no one else could see because they're locked into the way they see the world. And personally, I found myself having to personally disrupt myself before I can do something new. And that, I think, was the biggest lesson in life, is that the moment you feel comfortable is the moment you can't do something new and different.
Okay, perfect. One question for all of you. You've all written a book or several books. Why? I'll start with you, Amy. Why write a book?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before. It initially wasn't something I wanted to do. I think you think you're going to be an author someday, but you think it's going to be like an end of the career, like let me sum this up thing. My books came out very organically. I really just served my audience and with what they asked me for, and now I've got a bit of the bug in that way. I think it's a great way to kind of give people an idea of, here's a little bit of what my method is and what I stand on and what you need to know about me at this moment in time. And especially as a business owner, it helps bring people in the medium that they may love if they're big readers. And so it's introduced me to new audiences to be able to provide knowledge in that medium.
Perfect. Matt, why did you write a book?
I'd say two reasons. The big picture reason is that I wanted to hold up a mirror to human potential. I would imagine some kid out there like me growing up in desperation who thinks that the die is cast. I can never be on Shark Tank because I grew up in this circumstance, or I didn't get a college degree or something, and I wanted to use myself as a case study that you could do it too. And the second reason is I think there's a lot of inauthenticity in this authentic world that we now live in on social media. That everyone, when they hit a certain level, not everyone, but puts out this tidy little narrative that their troubles are behind them, and now I've arrived, and let me share with you the formula. And I don't know about everyone here on the stage, but every single day I regress. And so what I want to do is to tell the stories of what does it really look like to be successful? And what it really looks like to be successful is struggling even to implement the things that you already know are true. When I went on Shark Tank, and here's like the pinnacle of my life. I go from a high school dropout to sitting next to Mark Cuban on the set of Shark Tank. I freaked out. I was so paralyzed with fear and imposter syndrome that I was going to call in sick and pretend that I had food poisoning. And what I pulled aside one of the sharks in a room, Damon John, and I said, I'm freaking out. And he's like, why? I said, I feel like I don't belong here. I don't know why it's happening to me now. And you know what he said to me? He goes, Matt, you belong here because you are here. And it was like Socrates speaking to me. The idea that there is no final arbiter of belonging. Nobody's going to let you in and offer you a seat at the table. So I became so motivated to tell the story of what success really looks like and how arduous that journey is, and to maybe a little bit of bloodletting so I could share my own failures in the hopes that somebody in the world would see that and say, wow, Matt was freaked out on Shark Tank. What an anxious mess he is. Well, I'm anxious. Maybe I could go on Shark Tank one day.
Perfect, perfect. Brian, why write a book?
That was profound. So this is a funny story. I actually, at the time, was investing all of my extra energy into social media because it was new. And I had found my voice in social, on the different platforms with my audiences. And I never actually thought about writing a book. And a publisher approached me and said, you need to write a book. It's going to help take your word to the next level, help you grow your audience, expand your reach and your mission. And so I did, and it was a very interesting experience in that the first book actually it created something I couldn't do with social media, which was to create a movement. Mm-hmm. Each book was an idea, and each idea required deeper understanding and also a deeper ability to communicate what it means to the reader and what they need to do about it. And watching, to this day, books that came out in 2007 to today, people still reach out, still send pictures of the books, still talk about how it's changed their lives. And I realized at that moment that I would still need social media to keep up with real-time conversations, but books to create a movement inspired by those conversations to give back to the community and help them move forward.
Okay. Let's chat social media now, because obviously the past few years we've had some platforms maybe implode a little bit. I'm not naming any names, but for certain people, we've had format changes, algorithms changes every few months. Subscriber and follower counts don't seem to matter as much compared to 2 to 3 years ago. You're often competing with the best content on any platform in your area of focus, let alone possibly the best content on the platform that day. For somebody who is listening to you talking about finding an authentic voice, listening to vulnerable stories, trying to work out how to compete in the algorithms right now, big question, any advice?
You just have to start. I always tell everybody, I look forward to seeing your first terrible, terrible video. The favorite thing I get is, oh, Amy, I was watching your content, I was so motivated, but I feel so much better now that I've seen your first video. And it just makes everyone feel good that somebody has to start somewhere. And I had a bed in the back. There was a high street. I had to pause every time a bus drove by so the audio wasn't terrible. You have your first content and you have to get it out there and you have to keep going because each time you can get better.
Did you publish that kind of content when a bus came past, or did you refilm?
I would stop. I got better at editing because there was so much that needed to be fixed all the time. But yeah, I always just published it because every time you do, it gets better. And that's the only way that you end up being able to compete with anyone, but most importantly, yourself. It's, are you better than you were yesterday? You can't look at what everyone's doing all the time and compare yourself to it because you don't know how they got to that point. So yeah, that's my first piece of advice. Unless you're better than you were yesterday, who cares about the algorithm? As you get better, you'll learn more about how you can leverage that algorithm activity, and it will all work out.
Okay, Matt, what can you teach us about how you're approaching content right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm partners with Gary Vaynerchuk. I own VaynerMedia, right? So can you imagine what my life is like? You got to make 27 pieces of content a day. And I was like, but I don't like social media. I don't want to do 27 pieces of content. I feel violated by social media. So my number one piece of advice is you could really twist yourself into a pretzel and compromise your values by trying to emulate other people. I found my landing spot. I like LinkedIn. That may make me like a boomer, an old person or something. I like LinkedIn. It enables me to reach people in this room all over the world, and I find the content is authentic. And once I stopped trying to be on TikTok or do Instagram lives with Gary, and I love him to death, but it's not my thing. Once I leaned into LinkedIn, I found my place. And so I would say to anyone in this room, it's okay to have a love-hate relationship with social media and to use it as a tool for your objectives, and then to stay in one lane that feels true to yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. Brian.
I would start with why. I guess as Simon Sinek would say, why are you on social media? I found in a special research project I was doing for L'Oreal several years ago that most people were on social media for the wrong reasons. They just wanted the attention. And so they would do the things, they would create the content to be able to earn those likes and those follows, but that wasn't who they were. That wasn't their authentic voice. So once you get beyond the vanity of social media and you realize that maybe you have something to say or something that you're looking to achieve or something that you're looking to give to the community, once you have that, it's this advice. But I would start with understanding, what is your voice? What does the world look like because of your voice? Yeah. And why should we listen in order to be our best selves? That was a big Control-Alt-Delete moment for me as well, when I had to reconnect with social to realize, why am I doing this? And then invest in not just your voice, but in the content that brings your voice to life. So if it's video, or if it's LinkedIn, or if it's all of the above, but to try to give something to the community that no one else can give, which is your unique self.
Perfect, perfect. I feel like if I was to psychoanalyze you or analyze you briefly, there are three traits that I think that are coming through that are important. You're all relatively self-aware, right? And not everyone has that gift, but you're relatively self-aware, which is why people connect with you as humans and with your content. High expectations. You don't achieve what you've achieved without having high expectations for yourself and the people around you. And then the third is going to be around work ethic. Just making sure that you're working hard, creating content, creating businesses, etc. So they're the three things that I'm taking away from this conversation. We are at our time. It's been fast and furious. Would you please join me in thanking Amy, Matt, and Brian. And thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.